All right, how is everyone doing today? Welcome to my channel. This channel is for educational purposes, and we're checking into great theories and concepts and discoveries that you might not be familiar with because they have been suppressed, and the powers that be don't want you to know about this stuff. In particular, your priest, pastor, and your popes and rabbis don't want you to know about what's really in your Bible. And this is another Bible decode that we have, number 436, and we are trying to let you know what really is going on with your Bible. First of all, it certainly looks like, and from the videos that we have done so far and the research I have done so far, it certainly looks like the New Testament of the Bible was written by the Romans, not by the Aramaic speaking disciples of Jesus, but by the Greek speaking Romans. The Caesars of the Flavian dynasty of Caesars, the uh, late first century, they wrote the New Testament as a psychological operation against the Jews. And the Jews had been a big pain in the butt for the Romans for over a century since the Romans occupied Judea in 63 BC. Constant uh, revolting and insurrecting. And so, and a lot of this was based on the Jewish uh, Old Testament books, prophecies that uh, talk about the Jewish Messiah as a military commander who would rise up and deliver the Jews from the occupying power. And so instead, the Romans decided to write a fictional story about a Jewish Messiah named Jesus, who was not a military commander, but instead was a prince of peace and believed in rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's, walking the extra mile, turning the other cheek, and in general being very deferential to the Romans. Not in general, in total. Jesus never, ever does anything against the Romans, but he does plenty against the Jews, overturning the tables of the Jewish money changers and castigating the Jewish merchants selling small animals also at the temple for the sacrifice, encouraging his Jewish followers, disciples, to abandon their families in order to follow him, calling the Pharisees what does he call them? A generation of vipers, and so on. And Paul does the same thing, only worse, as we move along in the New Testament. And so, um, the Romans have their signature on this, circumstantially at least. And this is exactly what the Romans would do. This is exactly what the Romans had done. They had created a number of other religions in the first century here, including another religion targeted toward the Jews called Rabbinical Judaism, um, that uh, started with this campus at Jamnia that was for the Pharisees after this war between the Romans and the Jews broke out in 66 AD until 73 AD. And the Romans were masters of psychological warfare, propaganda, word games, wordplay, enigmas. That was all very entertaining and amusing to them. And if you look at the work of Josephus, the Jewish Roman historian, who was a member of the Flavian dynasty known as Flavius Josephus, living at Caesar's palace, and his 7-volume work, War of the Jews, was acclaimed by the Caesars. Josephus, his book is very reminiscent of the New Testament, almost as if were written together at the same time for the same reason by the same people. They kind of bounce off each other, bang off each other, and contain a number of different parallels, parables, satires, word plays, coincidences, way beyond level of coincidence. So I would encourage you to check out the work of Josephus and read it alongside your New Testament. You might want to start with General Titus's military campaign in Judea and compare that with Jesus's ministry in Judea and see if they are not identical. Now, when the Romans were writing the New Testament, they wrote as a limited hangout, meaning that they put a lot of stuff in the New Testament that is very, religious, very spiritual, very uplifting, inspiring, things that you can live your life based on, and that is edifying to you. Don't let that fool you. That is what the Romans had to put in there in order to make it look like a religion. And it is what the Romans wanted. The Romans wanted the Jews or whoever was reading their Gospels to be a good person. They wanted you to be hardworking, honest, and law-abiding. So that's all in there. But when they did write the New Testament, they borrowed from many different sources. I figure it was probably a team of intellectuals, a think tank of intellectuals that wrote them for the Romans, including maybe this guy Josephus, if he existed, but other high-ranking court historians and court intellectuals for the Romans, and they all chipped in and put in stuff that was, from other religious traditions, the Egyptian and the Persian and the Japanese and the Indian and the Chinese and pagan mystery schools, astrology and numerology and shamanism and magic and ancient Greek and Roman mythology, religion, and philosophy, especially Stoicism, a lot of Philo Judaeus and Seneca the Younger, also some ancient Jewish traditions, maybe contributed to them by the Herods, the Herod family, especially Herod Agrippa II. Now, this is documented in part here by Kersey in his book called 16 Crucified Saviors Before Christ. And this is a story about his finding that the Romans, well, not in his case, the Romans, he doesn't know that the Romans were the authors of the New Testament, but he knows that whoever was the author of the New Testament put in a lot of stuff from much older traditions. And in fact, that there is nothing in the New Testament that is unique or original. It is all derivative from older sources. Now, we are in chapter 40 of this book, which looks at a lot of Jesus's sayings and his actions and scrutinizes them a lot more closely than your average Christian does. Your average Christian gives a free pass, including truthers, gives a free pass to Jesus for a lot of very questionable behavior, questionable um, uh, advice or strictures or um, beliefs that are very uh, questionable. But most Christians bend over backwards to come up with excuses or different interpretations of this language. So we'll go through a handful of these and see what you have to think of them. Number 33, and Christ's injunction to fear God also implies that he is an angry being. It's in Luke 23:40. But past history proves that the fear of God has always been the great lever of priestcraft and the most paltry and pitiful motive that ever moved the human mind. It has paralyzed the noblest intellects, crushed the elasticity of youth, and augmented the hesitating indecision of old age, and finally filled the world with cowardly, trembling slaves. No philosopher will either love or worship a God he fears. The fear of the Lord is a very ancient heathen superstition. Um, Again, I would say it's more Jewish than pagan, but maybe both. It certainly is very Jewish, um, Yahweh, and so on. Number 34, the inducement Christ holds out for leading a virtuous life by the promise of well done, thou good and faithful servant, bespeaks a childish ignorance of the nature of the human mind and the true science of life. It ranks with the promise of the nurse of sugar plums to the boy if he would keep his garments unsoiled. Um, Now, uh, I guess maybe we are at the end of the list here. He says, for the remainder of the 200 errors of Christ, see volume 2 of this work, which I was unaware of. But I guess he's only going to give 34 of them here. Most of them I went through last episode. Here he says, there are many other errors found in the precepts and practical life of Jesus Christ, which we are compelled to omit exposition of here, such as his losing his temper and abusing the money changers by overthrowing their counting table and expelling them from the temple with a whip of cords when engaged in a lawful and laudable business, his getting mad. Um, Now, the money changers, they're Jews. What they're doing is they're exchanging Roman money for Jewish money because the Roman money has graven images on it, and the Jewish money does not. And the Jews have a stricture against graven images. And so they don't want to be able to use the the Roman money to buy animals for the sacrifice, or any other type of kind of religious use of the money. It has to be turned back into the Jewish money before it can be spent on animals for the sacrifice. So um, the money changers are really doing something lawful. Um, I don't know about laudable. Um, it's all, uh, mumbo jumbo, basically. Uh, but but yeah, so that's what's going on. It's not like they are um, charging interest, or that they are. Um, I mean, I'm sure that they are charging something. Um, but I mean, if any of this is ever true, um, who knows what actually went on here at this temple, or at the Temple of Jerusalem. But nonetheless, losing your temper and yelling and screaming is always, not the sign of a God or a son of God, except for the God of the Old Testament. Um, his getting mad at and cursing the fig tree, his dooming Capernaum to hell in a fit of anger, his being deceived by two of his disciples, Peter and Judas, which prompted him to call them devils, his implied approval of David with his 14 crimes and penitentiary deeds, and also of Abraham with his falsehoods, polygamy, and incest, and his implied sanction of the Old Testament with all its errors and numerous crimes, his promise to his 12 apostles to sit upon the 12 thrones of Israel in heaven, thus evincing a very limited and childish conception of the enjoyments of the future life, his puerile idea of sin consisting in a personal affront to a personal God, his omission to say anything about human freedom, the inalienable rights of man, etc. The scientific, this section uh, is called the scientific errors of Christ. That Jesus Christ was neither a natural or moral philosopher is evident from the following facts. One, he never made any use of the word philosophy. Two, never gave utterance to the word science. And three, never spoke of a natural law or assigned a natural cause for anything. The fact that he never made use of these words, now so current in all civilized countries, is evidence that he was totally ignorant of these important branches of knowledge, the cultivation of which is now known to be essential to the progress of civilization. And yet, it is claimed his religion has been a great lever in the advancement of civilization. But this is a mistake, a solemn mistake, as elsewhere shown, as he will show apparently in chapter 45, which is coming up. Everything, number 4, everything to Christ was miracle. Everything was produced and controlled by the arbitrary power of an angry or irascible God. He evidently had no idea of a ruling principle in nature or of the existence of natural law as controlling any event he witnessed. Hence, he set no bounds to anything and recognized no limits to the possible. He believed God to be a supernatural personal being who possessed unlimited power and who ruled and controlled everything by his arbitrary will, without any law or any limitation to its exercises. Hence, he told his disciples they would have anything they prayed for in faith, that by faith they could roll mountains into the sea, or bring to a halt the rolling billows of the mighty deep. He evidently believed that the forked lightning, the outbursting cloud, earth-shaking thunder, and the roaring, heaving, Volcano were but pliant tools or obsequious servants to the man of faith, and he displays no less ignorance of the laws of mind than the laws of nature, thus proving him to have been neither a natural, moral, nor mental philosopher. He omitted to teach the great moral lessons learned by human experience, of which he was evidently totally ignorant. Number 5, he never taught that the practice of virtue contains its own reward. Number 6, that the question of right and wrong of any action is to be decided by its effect upon the individual or upon society. Number 7, that no life can be displeasing to God which is useful to man. And he omitted to teach the most important lesson that can engage the attention of man, that is, that the great purpose of life is self-development. That no person can attain or number 9, that no person can attain or approximate to real happiness without bestowing a special attention to the cultivation and exercise of all the mental and physical faculties, so far as to keep them in a healthy condition. None of the important lessons above named are hinted at in his teachings, which, if punctually observed, would do more to advance the happiness of the human race than all the sermons Christ or Krishna ever preached or ever taught. And then he taught many doctrines which are plainly contradicted by the established principle of modern science, such as disease being produced by demons, devils, or wicked spirits, as in Mark 9:20. Christ nowhere assigns a natural cause for disease or a scientific explanation for its cure. His rebuking of fever discloses a similar lack of scientific knowledge, as in Luke 4:39. His belief in a literal hell and a lake of fire and brimstone, as in Matthew 8:8, is an ancient heathen superstition science knows nothing about and has no use for. And the Romans certainly did create the idea of Satan. It's not in the Old Testament. And the hell and, lake of fire and brimstone is a pagan thing. And these are things that can't be really taken seriously. And they can't be taken if you have any type of reasonable God. These are not grown-up type of beliefs. These are childish beliefs. And, they don't make any sense. And you only believe in them because you believed in them when you were a little kid, and you still hold on to these same beliefs. But a little bit of reflection will, demonstrate them in your mind. And that's why I believe that this movement of truthers needs to move forward on the basis of deism as opposed to this Christianity biblical thing, because it's a dead end street. It's a movement in the backwards direction. Deism is the belief in one God who is good, who has given us our faculties of reason, intuition, inspiration, aesthetics, conscience, aspiration, curiosity, wonderment, and even love that allow us to behold God's creation and to thereby understand God directly through our own faculties. And there is no need to understand God through intermediaries such as popes and priests, rabbis, and testaments, Qurans, and other books. We don't need the books and we don't need the experts to understand God. And that is the direction that we are moving in here for this golden age, this age of Aquarius, this 5D consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. These are the new standards. Everybody needs to be accountable and responsible for their own religious, um, beliefs, because they are, um, you know, within our grasp. They are within our capabilities on our own. We don't need somebody to tell us these things, especially 2,000-year-old books that have been translated over and over again, that are imbued with pious fraud and mistranslations and, um, you know, um, bad intentions, not to mention psychological operations. So I think we're going to continue to go over this list tomorrow. Um, and we're going to stop right here. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and contribute. And we will be moving on to the next section of this book here tomorrow when we return. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a great day.